Hello and welcome back to the Property Roundup on iPropertyRadio with myself, Carol Tallon. Today we're here in the heart of Limerick City, and joining me is Lisa Kearney of Rooney Auctioneers and President of IPAV, the Institute for Professional Auctioneers and Valuers.
Yeah.
I have to get that right.
You have to, yeah.
Lisa, you're very welcome.
Thanks
Thank you
so much.
for welcoming us into Rooney's. Delighted to be here in Limerick. I'll take any excuse to visit Limerick, and during the sunshine days, Limerick is looking absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell me a little bit about the marketplace in Limerick, because I have met with the Limerick Chamber. They paint quite a grim picture in terms of public sector delivery and delivery of housing across all types and tenures. But interestingly, and I wasn't aware of this, they said that the number one issue for their business and corporate members is now housing.
100%. And I have to commend the Limerick Chamber, because they're absolutely exceptional. Sean Golden is brilliant. We do a lot of work with him, and they're only next door to us here, so it's really easy to collaborate with them. The market in Limerick at the moment, and that is it, right? We are, and I've said this before, we are a victim of our own success in many ways, okay? Because we are so strategically placed. I was in our office in Galway this morning. We've just opened up a new office there, thank God.
Congratulations on the new Galway office.
Thank you very much. And that's going really well, but it's 55 minutes on the motorway, so it's brilliant. So from Limerick you can be in Kerry, Cork, Galway. You know, Dublin's not too far away either, which I go to a lot, but we're in a really prime position. We have a ton of multinational companies all coming in here. Now, we've been very lucky and very blessed with the amount that have come in already. But we still have more, and we're getting phone calls all the time for them, and we're working with the Chamber as well, and Sean will tell you that. We have a lot of interest from companies wanting to come and set up in Limerick, because they see it as such a strategic position, but also because the quality of life here is exceptional. And I'm not just biased on that because I'm from Limerick, but I really feel and see it myself, and that's why, and a lot of our clients, and that's why we have the interest and the demand here. But of course, with companies coming in, come employees. Now those employees need somewhere to rent and to buy and live. That's where we're finding the problem. So we're having that success in that we're attracting all of these multinationals and all of these employees and all these companies, but they've been let down because we don't have the supply coming to the market, and we're at dire numbers now. It's really, really bad.
One of the really interesting things about the FDI in Limerick City and County I've noticed is just even in the last 12 months, the expansion announcements. And I think it's one thing to win FDI, and sometimes that can come down to IDA strategies as well. But when you have a company that's come in, whether it's in recent years or recent decades, and they're expanding, and they're expanding their footprint, they're doubling their workforce, that's a real indication that not only are they happy with the level of talent that they're getting, but the talent they're getting, they're able to retain them. And you can't retain talent if they don't like where they are.
Absolutely.
And I think that comes down to maybe the quality of life that's on offer. But can that be sustained if you don't have anywhere to house people?
Well, this is the issue that we're having. And we have fantastic colleges here with the University of Limerick. We've Mary Immaculate College, and we've TUS outside. And the candidates and the students coming out of there are absolutely exceptional. And again, I'm not just being biased, but they are exceptional. And they want to stay. Now, and even a lot of them aren't local. They've come in from the Corks or the Kerrys or the Dublins or to study here, but they fall in love with Limerick. And Limerick got a bad press for many, many years, but in fairness, it is a super city. It's very easy to get around. The people are absolutely down to earth and second to none. And it's just, it's a great place to live and be. But unfortunately, and it's not just Limerick. I mean, I'm talking to agents through IPAV across the country. This is a national crisis. And this is something that we really have to. And I know we're all saying the government have to wake up and listen to this. But they're still not getting the message. They're not getting that message. And all this nonsense about a SAR of housing and all this kind of thing, what in the name of God is that about?
Well, let's start there, because your time as president of IPAV, the Institute of Professional Auctioneers Valuers, your time is coming close for the presidency. And quite frankly, if there were any ambitions to try on the policy side of housing to stimulate the delivery of housing, stimulate new supply, so that people could move on and up into new stock, that's been underwhelming. To say the least. And the first 3 months of government, we haven't gotten the signals that we were hoping for.
No.
So you've been speaking to IPAV members right across the country over the last, almost 12 months. Can we see, are there any pockets of Ireland where they're starting to see any sort of market equilibrium?
To be honest and in a word, no. And I'm being quite frank, because I think at this stage, this kind of mollycoddling around and cushioning, I mean, the government are there and the housing minister is there for one reason, to provide housing. And this nonsense of bringing somebody else in, I mean, it's really frustrating for me, and I get very, very cross about it, because this is his job. He is the housing minister. So if you can't do your job, step out of the position and allow somebody who thinks they can bring the policies and bring the change that we need, and we need serious reform. So if you're looking to bring that out and bring somebody else in, 430,000, that could go a long way to building housing and moving things along, you know, and that's outlandish.
Lisa, would you feel the same way if this new housing activation office
Yeah.
was not within the Department of Housing, but potentially maybe within the Department of Expenditure?
I think it should be looked at, certainly. I think they should call in experts who are on the ground, who actually know what they're doing, and no disrespect to the minister. But again, I haven't seen any evidence or any reform or anything positive as of yet. I think, as I said, this is his job. He needs to do it. He needs to talk to experts like us who are on the ground. We're at the coal face of this, meeting people all the time. It hasn't worked. It hasn't worked for years. Why bring out and reissue the same old humdrum blah, blah, blah? It's putting plasters over cracks, and it's not working. It needs to be seriously overhauled, and it needs to be seriously looked at. At the moment, not only are we facing awful planning laws and awful delays, we're facing serious lack of supply, but now what we're facing is affordability gap. And that's going to lock out a serious generation of people who cannot buy in Ireland.
Can we get specific about the affordability gap?
Yeah.
Because actually I've noticed there's been a couple of launches of affordable housing schemes in Dublin, and always the response online is, how is this affordable? So let's look specifically at Limerick.
Yeah.
What is an affordable house in Limerick?
Well, this is it. Again, what is affordable these days? And this is it. I mean, you see people, and we'll come on to something else after that, which is really interesting, which is coming out about it as well. But at the moment, there's a middle market there, okay? And I think they're saying the average salary is between 45 and 55,000 in Ireland. If you look at that middle market, those couples who are going out to buy, they are earning too much to be able to afford the affordable housing schemes or the social housing schemes, but not enough to get a mortgage on the price of houses at the moment. So where do they go? That gap, which was narrow at the start, is now absolutely huge. So where do we go with these couples, and what do we say to them? And what is the housing minister doing about this to be able to, and there's quite a lot of them. There's a massive
But is it a financial gap? Even if they were able to get the finance, would there be the supply there for them to buy?
No, and that's the thing. So again, we're meeting clients out there every day. I met them this morning, I'm on the phone to them, and they're bidding and bidding and bidding. They're coming, they have to go and meet the bank. They go in saying, okay, we're looking at this house that's 350 coming on the market, but sure, it's at 450 before it ends and sales. And this is another interesting thing, which I always look for silver linings, all right? And even in this broken market that we're having, and this crisis that's out there for buyers, the silver lining for agents, and I'm speaking purely from an agent's perspective now, is years ago when there was adequate supply, or somewhat of a balanced supply, let's say, people had this impression that agents would make up bids or phantom bids, right? And I've had so many people come to me and say, do you do this? Can you do this now? No, you know, and any member of IPAV and any member of the PSRA and licensed agents don't do this, because it's not professional, it's not ethical, and you lose your license over it. But interestingly, what's coming out of it, and I've had this conversation with quite a few people, is they're saying, only now are we seeing the process. Now people might say, what do you mean by that? So what they're saying to me is, when there was adequate supply, or supply was somewhat meeting demand, a house would come on the market, it would go on at 350, and all of a sudden it would go to 370 or 375, 380. But they couldn't understand how that was happening, because more houses would come along down the line. So they'd be going, oh, the agent is making up this to move the house, or the agent is a phantom bidding, or their friend or Carol is bidding on it for them. But now, because there's a lack of that supply, and they're seeing they have to bid and the bid and bid, and the bids are transparent because we get them all in emails and they're all logged, they're now actually understanding the process better. And that's really interesting. Now, call it a silver lining or not, we're still in a problem. But for me, it's a silver lining for agents, in that we are ethical, we are professional, we don't do this.
So do you think that the agents are doing enough to build trust? Because we know that estate agency is still one of the professions that registers low on trust for consumers.
Completely. And I do think that, I mean, as agents, yes, the vendor is our client, but your purchaser will become your client one day when they want to sell.
Yeah.
So you're working for both, in my eyes. Now, I know everybody says, yeah, but it's the vendor who pays you. Yes, that is. But it's a dual relationship. So those purchasers, and really and truly, the purchasers now need agents more than ever because they can't get housing. And they're relying on us. And I've got so many of them saying to me, who is going to the government to say we need housing? Who's going to bring this forward? Because the government aren't. Nobody's banging there on the. We are at IPAV. We're banging on the door constantly and consistently, and we will continue to do it. But it just seems to be falling on deaf ears.
I'm glad you brought up the need for buyers to be represented.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that IPAV has done recently and rolled out buyers agency training for estate agents and auctioneers, which I'm delighted about because I've always felt outside of the main urban centres that actually, I think all agents do a certain amount of work for buyers. However, I'd like them to be paid for it. I'd like for there to be that formal relationship there, so buyers can rely on it. But I think particularly for rural agents where there's no new stock and there's very little turnover of existing stock, it could actually be a lifeline, a viability that keeps a practice open that might otherwise not.
100%, and that's why IPAV recognised it and brought in that course, because it is another avenue for those rural agents or whoever to get into it. But you are somewhat of a buyer's agent already because you're helping them. You're helping them understand, you're helping them on the process. And if Carl isn't successful in buying a house now, and I get another one that I think, actually, this might suit her, I ring Carl. So that's literally acting as a buyer's agent to say, I have this property, come on, do you want to come and look at it?
I think it's even more than that. I think that shows a relationship. That's a relationship building.
100%.
And I think that that's the one downside of technology. And I'm a huge proponent for prop tech and other types of technology, not to the point of sacrificing your relationship with the auctioneer, because if you are the underbidder, you can still build a relationship so you're the first person who gets a call when another property comes in. And I think that's the old way of always buying and selling property. And that's old school estate agency and auctioneers, auctioneering. And I worry a little that's the thing I'd worry about technology displacing.
Absolutely. And it is, estate agency is a human being. It's a person-to-person business. You can have all the tools and it helps you, and yes it does, and scheduling tools and meetings and videos. And even when COVID hit, and I remember lots of people, agents were going out doing the videos, and it was great because it did help. Did we do them? Yes, we did. But I would always say on them, and people would ring me and say, can I put a bid in it? And I'd say, no, come and see the house when you can. You have to touch and feel any property. But it's also about building that relationship with them. So when you're walking through the house, if they're saying, yes, it's 3 bedrooms, but I don't like this part, I don't like that, you're clocking that and you're saying, okay, well, Carl doesn't like that it's not south facing, or that she doesn't have room to expand as the family grows and the house can grow with them. So I take that away. Now, I'm a long time doing this, so it probably just sticks in my head anyway. But I take that away from them. And then I might find that property and you'd be the first on my list to say, actually, Carl, now that might suit her, and I'll ring her. And I've had so many buyers and purchasers come back to me and say, thank you, because it didn't go up and daft. A lot of houses sometimes don't, but that suits us perfectly, and we'll get out there and we'll view it. So it is that dual relationship. And ironically, this morning when I was in Galway and I was standing on the street looking at the new signs going up on our place, this lady passed with her 2 kids, and she stopped and she said, Lisa? And I said, yeah. And she said, Avril, she said, you sold me a house years ago in Limerick. And I had to rack through and say Avril, and eventually came to me.
I bet you remember the house.
I did, and it was 22 years ago over in Farranshone that I sold her. She now lives in Galway. She rents out the house here, and she said, look, I might have some place in Galway for you. That was down the street. Amazing.
And that's just from standing outside the new building, watching the signs go into place.
Exactly. But also because I built that relationship with her years ago. So you know what I mean? So that's how it comes back always.
I absolutely agree with you. And you know, it's funny, as we were approaching here today, I remember walking into this office maybe 18 years ago when I was working as a buyer's agent looking for property and things like that. So actually, much has changed, much stays the same. Have you noticed a difference between Limerick and Galway at this stage, or is it too soon to tell?
It's probably too soon to tell, but Galway's facing the same problems as Limerick and every other city and town across the country. It's supply, and it is supply, and that is the big issue. Traffic in Galway is a lot heavier than Limerick, but that's another thing. But we
cannot mention Galway without mentioning Galway traffic. It is horrendous, and it's actually quite a source of embarrassment as well. But you know what I'm going to do, actually, to soften the traffic blow? I'm going to say that Rooney has actually listed a beautiful home, or a home in one of the most beautiful settings in Inver in Galway, and I saw it. and I said, right, if I was looking at the moment, that's where I'd be going.
It's a special place. It's actually just gone sale agreed though.
Has it gone sale agreed? Did it exceed its asking?
A hell of a lot.
Really?
Yeah. And interesting on that point
for anybody who's curious, I definitely recommend that you take a look on Rooney's website, because
special property.
The house was lovely. The location,
the
site,
second to none.
You could see the Cliffs of Moher and probably two of the Aran Islands.
Absolutely. And to be up there today, it's just absolutely stunning. But interesting, the majority of the buyers, or the viewers, should I say, that came to look at that, were all local to the area, who have sites in the area, but cannot get planning.
Oh, I feel their pain.
Seriously, in a housing crisis.
That's why I'm still looking on properties in
There you
Lisbon.
go.
That's how I saw it, Lisa.
I know a good agent up there now that can help you. But isn't that shocking?
I'd rather you knew a planner with a going.
Yeah, exactly. I'll get there yet.
But no, do you know what? And I know we're laughing, but it's not funny at all.
It's not funny.
It's feeling. It feels pretty tragic at the moment, and the fact that you've spent the last year, in addition to your day job, you've spent the last year speaking to agents around the country. You know, you've shared your frustration about, you know, maybe how underwhelming the first few months of government has been. I don't think many people would disagree with you there.
Yeah.
But if we are to move forward with the Housing Activation Office, what would your members within IPAV, what do they want to see happen?
Well, we want to see action. We want to see somebody taking action. That means coming to talk to us on the ground. And just having a roundtable discussion with people who are on the ground to see what's happening. Is that talking to every mayor in the city of all the different cities? Yes, of course it is. Is it talking to all the Chamber of Commerces in all the cities? Yes, it is. And getting all those stats and facts and seeing what's going on the ground down there, and in each city. And again, if they were to come down here, we'd certainly meet with them, our Mayor John Moran, Sean Golden with the Chamber, to tell them what's happening in our city. And I think if I was Housing Minister, I would do a tour around the entire of Ireland, to all the major cities first and then all the smaller, and talk to the people on the ground there and say, what is happening here? What do you need here? And where can we look at solving this? Like, as we just spoke about, the planning issues there. Why can we not change the planning for those families up in that area that need to get planning? They have the land, they have the sites. So if I was going there, I'd say, okay, how can we change the planning there? That's what the minister needs to be doing. Not all the, whatever they're not doing or doing, but that's what you need to do, to be on the ground and see, what's the problem local to Limerick? What's the problem local to Galway? What's the problem local to Dublin? What's the major problem there? And let's look at that and try and target that and see if we can come to a solution for it. That's what should be going on.
Do you think there's enough of an acknowledgement that there's a difference between not just cities and all the urban centres, because actually I think there's a very big difference between our capital city and maybe some of the regional cities, but also between even the regional cities and our rural areas. I mean, rural proofing has just fallen off the radar of this current government. And we see that through planning. So actually it's such a source of frustration to hear that the people who are bidding on properties now are people who had obviously aspirations of buying or building
on their
own home, and they already own their own land.
Yeah.
So do you think there's maybe enough of acknowledgement, or is that something you picked up on when speaking to agents, whether they were rural or urban based?
Yeah, I think it's not highlighted enough, and I think point in case is that house that we had up there. I myself didn't realise how big it was, because let's say it is in those more rural areas that you're seeing it, but genuinely there's 5 or 6 families up there who all have land and have worked hard for it, you know, and they want to set their kids up, their own kids on this land, and they cannot get planning. Now that for me is totally wrong, and that just shows you how broken our planning system is and our housing policy is. That should be, I mean, that's a serious red flag. But again, it's those rural areas that are forgotten. Infrastructure, forget about it. Absolutely forget about it. I mean, again, people wanting to work from home and remote working, there's no internet. There's absolutely no transport. You can barely get a bus out to any of the place. That's just wrong. So housing policy and infrastructure need to come together. You've got 3 departments, planning, housing and infrastructure. They need to work together. And they need somebody to circle that, sit down and get that working, because all 3 of those need to work together, you know, cohesively. There's no point in building all of this and having no infrastructure. There's no point in doing all the planning, but then they can't get a bus out to it, so they're not going to build there. So all of that needs to be knitted together. It needs to be joined up, and that's where the breakdown is, I think, with all this.
See, that should sit neatly into the National Planning Framework,
yeah,
which has been reviewed. We all know it's outdated. Even the government knows it's been outdated. And now, in its current form, it has been accepted and it's been rolled out as it is, and it doesn't address any of the regional infrastructure imbalances. So what does that mean, say, for towns and cities west of the Shannon?
Yeah, it means that they're just going to literally fall off.
You know, I'm conscious that you've had an insight over the last year that I haven't had. You've gotten to speak to agents all around the country. For I suppose, were there any issues brought up that you weren't expecting? Were there any surprises?
Not so much surprises, let's say. Again, I suppose it's the frustration of agents because they're feeling it on behalf of their clients is really, really, really evident out there. And again, you know, if agents don't have stock coming on, they can't sell it. So again, their business is affected. But also they have a ton of clients. And there's another market, and I think we spoke about it before, is we have an awful lot of clients who want to move and want to put their property on the market, but they've nowhere to go to. So there is that cohort of, and we've many long living people, thank God, my own parents included, who are a generation above us and above that again. They're all rattling around in big detached houses on 3/4 acre sites and 2 acre sites that everybody loved way back and nobody wants anymore. But they want to move on and they want to right size out of these to free them up organically for the middle movers and the families. They've nowhere to go to. So you look at, and I've been in many houses recently that they are living in one room. They use the kitchen and they probably use the downstairs living room as a bedroom now.
And is that due to cost of heating, mobility issues?
Mobility issues,
or just
cost
not
of heating,
needing the additional space?
So they have 4 or 5 bedrooms because they would have had 3 or 4 children or whatever. Mobility, they can't do the stairs. So they're living literally in the kitchen and the living room becomes the bedroom and what other room they have. And that's it. And they're saying, Lisa, we want to sell, but where do we go?
Has it been a frustrating year then to be president of IPAV and to see so much of the policy was lost in the run-up to the elections because all of our policy shapers were electioneering. And because of that, we were expecting, you know, because we brought back the incumbents, that we were expecting enough continuity that maybe they could hit the ground running. And I think most of the industry would be surprised at the lack of action in the last 3 months. And in fact, I found myself in the very surprising position of defending a housing minister with no reason to defend him, purely because I feel there has to be something. I'm really hoping that he's ready to bring something big to the table.
We all are. We all are. And it's not a case that we're here to knock anybody or bash him. We're not. We're all in the same boat here. We all want progress. All of the election, that took up all their time, as you say, they were electioneering and doing whatever to get voted in and nominated. So that takes months, of work.
And we felt it in the marketplace. We felt that all of the focus was on the election and not on solving the problems that they're paid to solve.
Take the eye off the ball there. Then they come into government. They're in, a few weeks and they're gone off again. I've seen nothing proactive, no urgency. And that's what I'm most disappointed with, is the urgency. Now, in any other crisis, and when I use the word crisis, I mean, there isn't a word... There should be a word stronger than crisis, because that's what we're in now, okay? And that's what really frustrates me and angers me a lot, because if you're given a job, and even my job as president or my role as president of IPAV, it's for a term of a year, but I took that role very, very seriously. And I went into that to say, give it everything. This is your new task, this is your new role. If you take it on, you're responsible to do it correctly and properly. And I really took that and went out and really tried to advocate for our agents and cover as much ground as I could, which was very, very busy. It was a whirlwind of a year and trying to do my own job as well. But I signed up for that. And if I didn't want to do it, then don't put yourself forward for it. And that's what really frustrates me with the current situation, is there's no proactiveness, there's no sense of urgency, there's no real deep understanding of what is happening. And that's what really... Now, I'm a very proactive person. I like things done yesterday. But if they can't be done yesterday, I like to see that there's something happening. There's strategies, there's plans, there's talking, there's movement. And there's some bit of action there. I'm not seeing that. And I know all the agents that I'm talking to across the country are not seeing that. And that's deeply worrying and deeply frustrating. And I'm a very strong believer in, if you feel that you can't do the job, step out of the way and let somebody else who can do it. And that's not being disrespectful. It's not being mean, it's not being whatever, but it's a serious situation we're in. And we can't just wear the badge and wear the flag and wear the t-shirt to say we're the minister of this or we're the minister of that or we're the president of this if you're not going to do the job. And that's basically where I come from on this. If you can't do the job, step back. I'm
conscious that we need to wrap up now, but And I know that we could talk about some of the challenges that your members have faced. We could talk about that for the rest of the day. And unfortunately, I think it's likely to get worse before it gets better, and that's just what we're seeing on the ground. It's what our policy is feeding through in pipeline.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, on a human level, you did take on this role. You took it very seriously. I know I spoke to you at the start of it and throughout, and your commitment to a role that can sometimes be taken on in a ceremonious way. Yeah. You definitely didn't take it on in a ceremonious way. What were your personal highlights? What did you get out of the presidency?
I loved meeting the agents and talking to agents from the bottom of Carrasavine up to Donegal, and I loved that because, again, it afforded me an opportunity that I normally wouldn't have, because we get so wrapped up in our own job and we're so busy in our own jobs, and you forget to kind of reach out to other agents. And what I was really loved was the strong network that is there within IPAV is absolutely immense. And I've had people call me, not even real estate related, you know what I mean? I'm a great advocate for mental health. And I've had people call me and just say, a lot of them, they didn't precisely have a problem, but just wanted to sound out or just wanted to chat. And I think they knew that I was a safe place to do that. And that I loved. And if I can get that message across again to everybody, that IPAV, the doors are open and we're always there for that, and that's what the support is there for. So I didn't want it to come in, as you say, in a celebratory role and just to wear the badge and wear the chain. I never once wore the chain. I wore it the day I got it, and I never wore it since then. And that was...
Now, was that a protest, or there just wasn't the opportunity?
Not a protest. It wasn't a protest. I'm all about inclusivity, and I believe we're all equal. So I don't believe that putting a chain on makes you better or stand out more, and I didn't want that. I'm the same as everybody else, and that's what, for me, what the role was about, to get to know everybody. We're all equal, we're all on the same, everybody's inclusive, and to say, how can we help you? For me, and I know, and I'm very proud of that chain, and it's you know, it is an IPAV chain, and it's a very important role. But for me, it wasn't about the chain, it was about the role, and it was about the relationship and reaching out to the agents and getting to know them, and to grow IPAV, and even to let the agents know what IPAV is really about and at its core. And yes, we can do all the advocating and all the policy, and yes, that's important, but it's about the agents and it's about our members, and that's, I think, what the core of IPAV is and what we need to get out there more. And even though I'm stepping down and the fabulous Mr. Fintan McGill is coming in, I'm still there. You know, just because I'm not with the name, the title of president, I'm still there, I'm still doing the same, and I'll still be pushing for members and for IPAV, and I think that's really what I want to get out to people. But it was a thoroughly enjoyable year. It was a whirlwind of a year. I suppose naively thought it wouldn't be as busy, but you know what? I absolutely loved it. Loved it.
Delighted to hear that, and I think your presidency was so well received. There was huge advocacy done, and I think that's incredibly important, but I think it's going to be equally important, if not more so, in the years that follow. But for today, thank you so much. It was lovely to be able to do this interview in person, because so often we have to do it online because of busy schedules and everything else. So between Dublin, Limerick and Galway, I'm delighted we were able to catch up today. And congratulations to you and all the Rooney team on the opening, not just the successful operation, 55 years in Limerick?
55 years, yep.
But
starting in Galway.
Now in Galway. So genuinely congratulations, delighted for you and all the team. And thank you so much for welcoming us into your office and letting us take over today.
I really want to thank you and Katie for coming to Limerick, because I know it's out of your way. I really do appreciate it. But even for all the support that you gave during the year, and for all the work you do for the agents across. I mean, seriously, I don't think we say it enough to you. You are fantastic in what you do, and we really do appreciate it. You're a strong support for IPAV, and we really, really do appreciate it.
Well, so thank you so much. You know, it's one of these things that actually, if we can improve the ecosystem, then it improves it for everybody.
100%.
And that's always been our ethos. So delighted to hear that. But thank you so much for your year of service, and I know that that's going to continue. And I look forward to seeing you in Galway.
Absolutely.
Any excuse to come west. That was Lisa Kearney. My thanks to Lisa, and of course to the Rooney team here in Limerick for allowing us in today. My thanks as always to producer Carol Tallon and to the Hear Me Roar team. Finally, thank you indeed for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Property Roundup. In the meantime, please be sure to check out all of the other construction and real estate shows here on iPropertyRadio.com.